How finished is the fence along our southern border?
I'm sorry, can that get repeated?
How finished is the fence along our southern border?
It's completely finished.
We were promised a fence by the Secure Fence Act of 2006. That fence goes, it's supposed to go about, I think that fence goes about 120 miles, something like that. It's not even finished there, by the way. And I always think, when I think about that fence, I grew up in northern New Jersey. And if you watch The Sopranos ever, T's house, the house they used for T's, was about 2 blocks from mine. Now, most of my friends growing up came from Italian working class families, and their dads mostly were in construction. We could just hire their dads while retired and lay bricks, and let me tell you that the wall would have been built in 3 months. The point is, there is no wall because they don't want a wall, because the employers in the service sector don't want a wall, because people who are in bed with the Mexican government don't want a wall. It's about political will. It's not about anything else.
Can I have one small thing to that, out of turn, but I do a lot of business along the border. I cross the border a couple of times every month and have for the last 10 years. It's worse than not simply having a fence. Many here may recall a few months ago when the media launched this diatribe about, oh, American guns are fueling the violence and the border's down, yada, yada. Ever since then, most of the time, when I cross the border, Juarez, Nuevo Laredo, Reynosa, over half the time, we have U.S. Border Patrol personnel on our side of the border checking vehicles leaving the U.S., going into Mexico, at the same rate as checking vehicles coming in. We've diluted our inspections by 50% in order to try to generate some, I assume, statistics to justify additional gun control here in the U.S. Because God knows these cartels people more than willing to pay $1,000 for a semi-automatic here rather than $300 for a full auto out of Venezuela.
If legislation, as I understand it, passed in Arizona, and I understand from Fox News that that was passed by about a 70% margin, why are the politicians in Texas so afraid of it? Because the demographics have to be similar here.
I don't want to put my text in the fence.
Well, after the session ended, I started trying to figure out why we didn't get anywhere last session, except for John Corona. He had some wonderful bills that passed that dealt with gang legislation I'm very happy with. The difference in Texas, I believe, is that we have 37 Democrat Hispanic legislators. I mean, that's my personal opinion. And just from listening to them speak during the hearings that I testified at, I don't think their loyalty lies with this country. I mean, I'm just going to be real honest. I don't believe in political correctness. So just from hearing their comments, and then I think that they are really sort of, they've got a lot of power. I think they have a lot of power with the speaker. I believe that he made a deal with them to get into power. And like I said, part of that was making sure that no legislation got out of the House. So that's why because most of the states that the legislation passed in, there was not nearly that amount of Hispanic legislators in those states. So that's just...
Does Arizona not have a fair share?
Not the same amount that we do. No, we have a great larger number. That's my personal opinion.
Could I add to that comment?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one comment, which is very self-evident, but I think it's important to make. And that is that the immigration policy that we have in the United States is an example of what the Founding Fathers in the Federalist Papers called the usurpation of power by the governing class. Okay? They do not represent us. They are contemplating bills that would double immigration. Every credible public opinion research survey over the last 15 years show that about 3% of the American people believe immigration is too low. But they want to double it. So there is a divide between our governing class and the rest of us, and that's where I understand that the That is where I understand the Tea Party thing is coming out of, and this fury at the total non-responsiveness of our government.
Yes. I wanted to ask a question. You were making some comments about some of the Republican concerns about some of the Republican senators. And we've all heard about Lindsey Graham and how he is. And of course, we all know that John McCain is probably not going to vote for it this year because if he does, he's definitely going to lose that election. But I haven't heard any mention of Richard Lugar from Indiana, who I think has voted for every single piece of legislation he can. He's completely bought and paid for by the Chamber of Commerce. And actually, the second senator that is more pertinent to us, I'm on the email list for Senator John Cornyn, and it was about a month and a half ago or so. I received an email from him. I don't think it was a response to a comment. I think it just came in his regular newsletter saying that he believed that it was time for comprehensive immigration reform. Did anyone else get that letter? And so I actually, when I got that, I called his office, and they completely denied that he was for any type of amnesty whatsoever. Now, I know the little trick with the word amnesty, but do you have any comments about Senator Cornyn and Senator Lugar? Because I'm very concerned about Senator Lugar, that he's going to be one of the ones that jump.
I am as well. I mean, Lugar is a likely candidate for the Democrats if they're going to find a Republican. And your incredible frustration with John Cornyn, I couldn't share it more. If any of you happen to watch the hearings in which they had leaders of faith-based organizations that support open borders immigration speak to the Senate, and by the way, let me tell you, they only invited people who support open borders. John Cornyn was a lapdog fawning in front of these people. And I just want to, I can't help but get it in there because it is so important. CIS, we just recently did a study, it's one of the largest studies, we did it with Zogbius International, of the divide between religious leadership in this country and people of faith, between the pulpit and the pew. Well, you know, immigration policy has been called the perfect policy storm because nothing divides the political and financial elite more from the ordinary American than immigration, more than any other social policy there is. In this study, we had a very large cohort of Roman Catholics, mainline Protestants, born-again evangelicals, and American Jews. And what we came up with is we said, you've got a choice between amnesty and attrition. Okay? Attrition. 95% of born-again Christians choose attrition. 90% of mainline Protestants choose attrition. 89% of Catholics choose it. And even 80% of mostly liberal American Jews do. So those clergy folk out there are speaking not only to deaf ears in the pews, they're speaking to ears that are getting very angry.
I personally talked to Cornyn myself on several occasions. Does he listen? And I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you what he does. We went to visit his office. We didn't see him, but we saw his assistant. And then I saw him personally several times while living in Houston. And I give him a hard time. I always say, are you still supporting amnesty? And he'll look at me in the eye and say, I don't support amnesty. And I say, but I've read your bill. It is an amnesty. And I've never quite understood why George Bush and Cornyn look at their bills. It offers, you know, fines and a pathway to citizenship, and then say it's not amnesty. But he will tell you to your face, I don't support amnesty. So if he ever tells you that, ask him to look at the bill. And you want to see his bill, if he has one, or his old bill. But that's not true. I mean, I read his bill, and it is an amnesty. Amnesty just means forgiving someone of breaking a governmental law. Basically, that's what it is. And I don't know what they're thinking, but he'll look at you and say that.
Actually, I have a follow-up question for you since you're from Houston. I just recently learned there's an organization, I always forget the name of it, it's like the Greater, my wife actually might remember the name of it. What's the name of it?
Partnership.
Yes. Are you familiar with that partnership?
Yes, I am.
I've long suspected, at least for the last 6 or 7 years, that Republicans in Texas, the ones that kind of get the money and get pushed up into power like Cornyn and Hutchison, are being run by puppet masters, and I never have really figured out who they are. I figured the Chamber of Commerce was involved, but now I've actually got a name, and apparently they've had a number of them. We're actually up in D.C. in Pelosi's office just last week after the Arizona immigration bill came out, and I'm just wondering what you know about this organization down in Houston.
Well, the greater partnership is made up of a lot of influential people in Houston, big business people and corporate people, and they kind of run the city. And they have a lot to do with who wins our mayor. And although they didn't this time, they lost.